and sales taxes are defined in Utah Code 5912. And if you click, trying some animation, so it's going to be a little clunky, but if you click the next button, you'll see that it's part 22. So 5912.22 is the definition of everything I'll be talking about when it comes to local option sales taxes. So the next slide, there are 5 what we call quarter-cent sales tax options for local jurisdictions to impose. They range from 0.2 to 0.3% of a cent. So we say quarter cent even though they're not necessarily actually a quarter cent. And they vary by county classification. Some can only be imposed, for instance, by the second class, and there's the President's Transit Service. So some are specifically for public transportation systems. And then they don't need to be imposed in the order. So you can impose the 4th quarter, that was the Prop 1 back in 2016, before you impose, let's say, the 2nd or 3rd quarter. And just so you know, when we say quarter-cent sales tax, it's 1 cent on a $4 purchase and 25 cents on a $100 purchase. So just in terms of the magnitude of that tax. Next slide. So the majority of the local option sales taxes as defined in state code can be used for a pretty broad definition. This is the allowable uses for the majority of those local option sales taxes. You can see that they can be used on any kind of classification of roads. They can be used on a lot of safety infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure, on airports, on active transportation facilities, on intelligent transportation systems, public transit, bonding, and some sort of preservation. And then what I always give everyone is the one that says all other modes and forms of conveyance used by the public. And that was put in as kind of a catch-all. Let's say drone technology became something before the code was rewritten, kind of allowed for their catch-all. Does anyone have any questions about these allowable uses before I go on? Just jump in whenever you have a question.
Yeah, but if you're not going to allow me to go in, I'm not going to finish up, so.
Okay. So then the next slide, Lance. So there's, like I said, 5 quarters.
Not right now.
Most of them only have one option. 2, the 2nd and 3rd have 2 options. And like I said before, they can range from 0.2% up to 0.3%. And I'll walk through each one of these and tell you the allowable uses and whether or not Morgan County can impose them. So if you go to the next slide, so for the 1st quarter, there are 2 options. 2213 can be imposed by the county or the city. This is used for public transportation systems only. So because Morgan County does not have a public transit district that serves it, you would not be eligible to impose this. 2215, you are also not eligible to impose, but I put it here because this is what Morgan City imposed at the end of last year, so last fall. And I know there's some questions about now that the city has a sales tax, what that means if the county were to impose a local option sales tax. And what that would mean is they would get compounded in Morgan City. So right now, Morgan City, with this 0.25, they have a 6.45 combined sales tax rate. And if the county were to impose any local option sales tax, that 6.45 would go up to 6.7. And in Morgan County, so outside Morgan City, the rest of Morgan County, you're currently at 6.2%, and that would go up to 6.45. So it would just get compounded within the city boundaries. Next slide. So for the 2nd quarter, again, there are 2 options that the county can impose, and you can impose either one of these. One, 2214 is primarily for transit systems and airports. So within the county, that means that you would only be able to use it on the county airport. The 2216 can be used on any of those eligible uses that I mentioned before. So all different types of road facilities, public transit, active transportation, safety, ICS. And both of these would need to go out to voter approval. So you as a council would need to vote on it, approve that the question could be asked, and then it would need to get approval by voters. On the 3rd quarter, there again are 2 options. 2218 you're not eligible for because that is just for counties of the 2nd class. But 2217, you would be eligible for, and it can be used on that slew of eligible uses I mentioned before. And on this one, you're not required to get voter approval, so the county legislative body can approve this.
Hey, Julie, can I step in real quick? This is Commissioner Anderson. We've got a lot of information that you're feeding us, and it's great. Can we have a copy of this presentation sent to us?
Yes, and I have a summary table, so you can compare everything in a couple slides.
Great, thank you.
But yes. And then the fourth quarter was that Prop 1 back in 2016. This is the quarter that the city had previously passed a resolution to ask the county to impose. This can be used on all of those eligible uses. You're eligible to impose this, and it's not required to go to a voter approval.
Should this be on the fourth quarter slide? Okay.
Oh, sorry, yeah. If you go, so, I don't know what side you're on, Lance, but if you are on the side that says fourth quarter with the check mark, if you go to the next slide, the thing about the fourth quarter is that it's distributed within the county. So the county itself, if you oppose this, would only get 0.15%. And then 0.1% of that quarter would go to Morgan City and the unincorporated areas. And if you click, there's some animation on this plan, so if you click and then you click again, you'll have all the animation. The thing about that 0.1% for Morgan City and the unincorporated areas is that gets distributed based on population and location of the transaction. So it's a bit complicated, and it also depends on who else in the state has imposed that. So the formula is a little bit indirect, but this one would be shared between the county and the city. And then Lance, one more click, and the last option is the fifth quarter. You're not eligible for this because it's the public transit quarter, and you have to impose the 4 previous quarters, but I wanted you to know about it just so your information is holistic here. And Lance, the next slide is a summary of your local, of the Lubbock sales taxes. And so, like I said, there are 5 total quarters. Morgan's eligible to impose 3 of those quarters. If you were to impose all 3 of them, that would be up to a 0.8% total sales tax. And 2 of them are, the second quarter requires voter approval, and the third and fourth you can do as a legislative body. And then if you click one more slide, Lance. So I used calendar year 19 to do this estimation because the way that internet sales are taxed is that the county gets the sales tax based on the location of that purchase. And more people stayed at home in the last year to buy things online. A lot more people went shopping in Morgan County, and Morgan County and the city both saw about a 30% increase in the amount of sales last year. So I thought if I did 2020, it might sort of be artificially high, so I used your 2019 sales. And we had about $127 million of taxable sales, which would generate about $318,000 per quarter. If you click the next slide, Lance, you guys have about 12,000 people in the county, so each additional quarter that you impose would be about $26 per person per year of additional tax. And there's about 3,000 households, so it would be about $95 per household per year of additional tax that would be going for transportation uses.
Wow. So Julie, can I just step in real quick? So is this, you mentioned that I think the third and the fourth that we could impose that as a commission. Are these numbers for, and I might have missed this, but what do these numbers include? Which quarter percent do these numbers include?
Yeah, so this would be any single quarter that you...
Any single quarter.
It's just a
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if it's the second, the third, or the fourth. If you impose the 0.25, this is how much on each one of those 0.25. So if you did 2 of them, then you could double this. Instead of 318, whatever that would be, $639,000 a year.
Can we go back to the slide on what we can use it for a minute?
So is this already being applied or not? This is an option we can add. These are options that we can add.
Which one do you want to go through, I'm sorry?
Are we getting?
There
It's
was
like 5 allowable uses.
allowable uses.
Because we still get our other sales tax. This is just an addition. But this is sales tax to be.
Okay,
specific
so roads,
for roads and transportation.
sidewalk safety features,
Does that include trails too, or is that not?
Or
Julie?
active transportation,
Or active transportation, yeah.
right?
Yeah, can that include that?
What'd you say?
Julie?
Active
Yeah,
transportation.
sorry, it's hard to, it's a little bit hard to hear, but I can't see you anymore, so, but yes, so for these quarters, you can use them for active transportation. That's, in here it says a facility that's non-motorized, for non-motorized vehicles and multimodal transportation and connects an origin with the destination. And so that's pretty vague in terms of, how you would interpret that. You can use it for gravel facilities or paved facilities, but the ask is that it's, you know, a transportation corridor, so not like a mountain bike trail or a jump park. But, you know, if this is a bike lane or an street trail, those would be allowable uses.
That was the difference we were talking about earlier.
So Young Street Bridge, for instance, if you wanted to expand that to include bicycle and pedestrian facilities, that would be a use. If you wanted to extend the trail
Used for
that's along the
purchasing
river,
land.
you could use that.
Put trails on?
Anything that would allow,
Okay.
so,
Yep.
what is that? It's the second quarter, the third quarter, or the fourth quarter could be used for that.
So it could be used for river infrastructure also, if we wanted to do anything with the river?
Well, if you were to put a trail next to the river, yes, but if you were to do like a restoration of, you know, the.
It's probably not in the channel, but a trail
I guess it
along.
depends on, there we go, I think that's what you're getting. I guess it depends on what you mean by the river.
Like, for instance, a white water park or something like that. I mean, something that would enhance people to come and maybe come to the river, but to be at the river and use it the way we'd like them to use it.
You could not be able to use a local option sales tax for transportation on like a whitewater river facility unless there was something tied to transportation in that.
Okay,
So
all
if there
right.
was, if it's
So
not-
trails.
But we
if
could
it's
do a
not
trail next to the
Yeah, we could do
whitewater
that.
park.
Yeah, okay, okay. Things out.
Are there any further questions? I had you go back to the slide. I don't know if that you were at the end of your presentation, so I don't want to cut you off prematurely.
I'm at the end of the local option sales tax portion, yeah.
Okay. All right. We can move on to the next portion then. If there's not further questions.
I do have one question though, and in terms of the percents that we can add ourselves without voter approval, what's the process to do that? Is that just a process that we hold a public hearing and then approve it, or how does that work? Do we need approval from the State Tax Commission?
I'll admit that I don't know entirely
Okay.
how that process works in terms of who you need approval from, whether tax commission. So I would pass that question along to your lawyer.
Okay, that's totally fine.
I don't know exactly how that process works.
Okay.
I think for the 2019, at least the fourth quarter, you could pass an ordinance. So however you pass normal sales and use taxes, whether that was, I guess, the RAM tax you went out to vote, but yeah, I think it's just an ordinance the city did that for their first quarter. They passed that by the legislative body. Okay, so on corridor preservation, Lance, there's, let me see if you have that part of the presentation up.
Okay.
Okay, so if you go to there's a slide that says corridor preservation, and the next slide is the code. So this is defined in code 72 and then click find the little yellow box will pop up, section 117.5. The local highway and transportation corridor preservation fund. So everything I'm talking about is defined there. Next slide, Lynn. So the purpose of the local corridor preservation fund is to preserve highway and public transportation corridors, save on acquisition costs, and promote better long-term statewide transportation planning. This is the next slide. The main funding source for corridor preservation funds is a vehicle registration fee that's imposed within each county, or can be imposed. And so in 2019, Morgan County had about 15,500 vehicles registered in Morgan. So if you assume that none of those were exempt from vehicle registration fees, we're talking about roughly $155,000 per year. But you guys, that number might be slightly different based on who's actually registered in the county. Other sources can be appropriations made by the legislature. If there's public or private sources, rental or sales from property you did acquire. So let's say you acquired something that you continue to rent out the building until you're ready to build a road. Those rents can go back to the corridor preservation fund, bonding, and then you can get tax revenue from the third quarter. So 2217 is what you are eligible to oppose. So you can take some of that funding and put it back towards the local corridor preservation fund. So in general, next slide, you can use the corridor preservation fund to purchase real property, pay debt on projects that were funded by the corridor preservation fund, pay maintenance costs of the property. You can use a portion for countywide transportation planning if you're outside of an MPO area, and you are, or revolving loan funds. And then, on the next slide, Lance, there are special uses. Okay, so in the counties in the 3rd to 6th class, which is what Morgan is, you're a 4th class county, you can use it on pretty much any facility, or any facility. State highways, principal and minor arterials, major and minor collectors, transit facilities, but you could not use corridor preservation funds for recreation trails. If you go to the next slide, there are a couple of exemptions for smaller class counties on how to use corridor preservation funds, and that is that you can use half of your current balance, but not more than half of the fiscal year revenues to pay for construction, operation, and maintenance of a road. And then also, and this is probably how much this applies to Morgan County, but you can also repair survey monuments. But the important thing is that construction, operation, and maintenance of a Class B or C road, so that's a city or county road. And then the last slide, Lance, is just the process that you would go to expend those funds. So first, the COG, the count, would establish an endorsement process, and so that means that you would establish how you would prioritize and how people would apply for funds. And that prioritization process, sorry, going down to it, in the code says, all fund money should be prioritized based on considerations including things like areas with rapidly expanding population, the willingness of local governments to complete studies, the preservation of corridors by the use of local planning and zoning processes, the availability of matching funds, cost effectiveness of the preservation process, maintenance costs, and whether the transportation or public transit corridor is included as part of a county or municipal master plan or the statewide long-range plan. So the code does outline some of the things that you should include in that prioritization process. The COG would then prioritize the projects that have been applied. They would send that back to you, the county legislative body, for approval, but they can only do this once per year. So that's the process you would go to extend that about $150,000 a year in corridor preservation funds. Does anyone have any questions about that process? Okay, so these two, local option sales taxes, corridor preservation funds, plus the money that gets allocated from the gas tax to the counties, which is the B&C fund, and then also whatever you're taking from your general fund, are some of the main ways that local counties and cities pay for transportation infrastructure.
Awesome.
So do we
So I don't know
have
if anyone has
the,
any other questions or wants more information about what I said.
do we charge the registration fee already?
Yes. Yeah, and that fund is in.
And that's what's the COG fund?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
We're,
Okay.
we're going to be using a portion of that funding on the road, the back road in Croydon, Lost Creek Road,
The cutoff.
the cutoff road.
Okay.
The city will be using some of that funding on their bridge.
On the bridge.
Next year.
Okay. Are you hearing that conversation, Julie?
Sorry.
You can speak a little more into the microphone. It's hard for me to hear when it's sort of back away from the microphone. But I kind of got, I think, Commissioner McConnell asked if you were collecting the vehicle registration fees and then he had just mentioned what it was being used for. Commissioner Newsom.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was my understanding that you had not expended any of those funds previous to probably this year before?
Yeah, that's correct. To my knowledge, we haven't expended any of those funds thus far, so. Which has been good because only being able to use 50% of it and only having 150,000 a year come in, which sounds like a lot of money, but when you can only use half of it, it doesn't go very far when you're talking about land acquisition of roads.
Right.
I mean, half of that doesn't buy an acre of ground in Morgan County.
Right, so roughly that $75,000 a year can be used on the construction operation and maintenance, and then the rest of it can be used for corridor preservation, but yeah, like you said, if you don't have anything to preserve, then there is sort of an issue on the uses of that. But you can use that 75 on planning. I know that Weaver County has used some of that before on planning money. And then, have a list here. I had done some research a couple of years ago on whatever counties were using. Yeah, so both in Tooele County and Weaver County, they have used some of that money for transportation planning. In Tooele County, they had used some of it for the Tooele Valley long-range transportation plan. And Washington County had used some of the money for a bus service plan between St. George and Zion, and access and parking study in Springdale. And then Washington has used it as a revolving loan fund for corridor preservation. So there are a few counties that have used the portion that's not that 50-50 portion for something other than property acquisition. So as a county, you could use it, your corridor preservation fund, if you wanted to fund a trails master plan, for instance, or anything other than like that would be countywide. And that's not, there is some limitations on that, but it's not subject to that, 50% of the funds. I think it has something to do with like how much of, so if you did it for countywide transportation or public transit planning, no more than 4 years allocation every 20 years could be used. So 4 times, what is that, 4 times 155,000, every 20 years. So you have actually quite a bit of money that you could use for planning.
Julie, do you know of any other county that has not implemented these 1/4% sales tax? Do you know of another one besides Morgan that has not implemented it?
Do I know of another, sorry, you're kind of coming in and out. Do I know of another county that has not implemented a local option sales tax? Is that the question?
Yes.
In the Wasatch Front, there is not any. In the Wasatch Front back area, let me see. Box Elder has done 2, Davis County has done all 4, as has Salt Lake, Summit, Utah County, and Weber. Tooele has done 3 of the 4, and Wasatch County has done 1 of the 4. I would have to look through, I have the, if you give me 1 second, yeah, Garfield County has not imposed any of them. Iron County and Grand County, Iron County, only Bryan has imposed one, so much like Morgan, when just one city has done it, but on the county, not Juab, Kane, and Paiute are the only ones that have not, and then Wayne County. So those are the only counties in the state that have not imposed any of these, and all the ones along the sort of Wasatch front and back urbanized areas have imposed at least one.
Except for Morgan, sorry.
Go ahead.
Except for Morgan.
Yeah, except for Morgan.
Okay, just,
And we're the only northern
Right,
Utah
right.
county.
okay.
Is there any way to differentiate how much of that money that is spent in our county is residents versus non-residents or not?
I don't think I have that information. I can tell you the sectors, the economic sectors it's being spent on, but not whether that's coming from residents or not residents. The thing about that money, well, the thing about any kind of local option sales tax is that if people are going out, so I know that there was sort of a conversation when the city was imposing its local option sales tax on automobile taxes, right? Whether or not this would move people outside the county and going into, I don't know, Davis or Weber County. The thing is, even if you impose a local option sales tax, right now Morgan County is, let's see, let me go back up there. Like I said, you guys have your 6.2%. And so if you impose 0.25, you'd be at 6.45. Davis County is at a 7.25% tax rate. So even if you impose a 1/4% more, you would still be quite a bit lower in the overall combined sales tax rate than any of your neighboring counties. Summit County, I think, is maybe even higher because they've imposed that 5th quarter. So Summit County sales tax rate right now, well, if you go to Park City, it's 9%, and then in the other places in Summit County, it's 7.15. So I don't know how this is residents versus tourists, but I do know that the counties that are surrounding Morgan County all have quite a bit higher sales tax combined rates. So actually, it would still be cheaper for someone to do their shopping in Morgan County than to go into Davis or Weber or Summit or Salt Lake County to do shopping.
Okay.
Any other questions for Julie?
Julie, do you have the sector numbers there? You could just tell us like the top 2 sectors that generate the tax revenue?
So the one good thing about doing a virtual presentation is that I have all the data closer at hand. So in Morgan County, so when it comes to, okay, your largest sales tax, the largest ones that have taxable sales on them would be your motor vehicle and parts dealers. You're getting that's about $54 million in taxable sales a year. And then your next highest one would be non-store retailers. So this would be, I think that's the one that's the online sales. And that's getting about $22 million a year. And then your next highest is
The bowling alley, I'm sure.
the food and beverage stores. So that goes to your grocery stores and whatnot. So those are your top three sources.
Perfect, thank you.
If there's not any further questions, Julie, thank you very much for your presentation and for answering our questions.
I'll send you the link, Rand has the link to the presentation, but I'll go ahead and send that to you, Commissioner Anderson, as well. And then if there's any other information that you wanted, I'll send the link that I was looking at, so you guys have that as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a presentation from Melissa Frygang. Close?
Yes, no, that was great.
Okay.
Where do you want me?
Whatever's most comfortable for you. If that has a microphone, so that's helpful.
Is it helpful to you if I have a microphone?
I can hear you.
It'd be easier for me to see what you're seeing, if that's okay.
Okay,
Is that helpful?
that should work. I think we'll still pick up the, because that's a speaker as well, right? Or a microphone. Yeah, so, right there, that'll probably pick you up right there.
No, it works.
No, it is good here. So, thank you for the invitation to come today. I am going to be presenting our Weaver Morgan Local Homeless Coordinating Council. And so I'm guessing this is somewhat of a surprise to this body. I know that Commissioner Anderson came and visited with our Commissioners Harvey and Jenkins, and I think it was a bit of a surprise when we started to roll some of this out. So I was invited to come visit with you today, kind of give my knowledge of what we know about the homeless services system, and then I'm happy to entertain any questions afterwards. And you can certainly interrupt me. I apologize if I'm not speaking too loudly. I actually had my tonsils out last week, as sometimes I slip over my own throat, so I'm not used to being tonsil-less lately. So, next slide, please. So the Center of Excellence is a brand new strategic partnership in Weber County. We are a strategic partnership between our county commission. So I am under Commissioner Jenkins' portfolio, but I report up to all three commissioners. And then we're also part Weaver Morgan Health Department and part Weaver Human Services, which interestingly enough, both Weaver Morgan Health Department and Weaver Human Services serve Morgan County. But all three entities are the entities that consist of my board, who I report to. But the work that we do interfaces together across systems. And so that's us as a Center of Excellence. Our focus is right now, so the goal is to mobilize all of the agencies that reside inside of our communities, whether it's economic development or employers or nonprofits, for example, that are working with homeless individuals. So it really can be pretty much anything, but our whole desire is to be more efficient and more effective with the dollars that come into the county to serve our residents better. And then also just to mobilize everyone so there's a deduplication of efforts and so that people get the exact right dosage of what they need versus maybe getting housing, but they really need mental health or they need both, as an example. So my focuses right now are the social determinants of health. I'm not sure if you guys have had a chance to hear about the social determinants of health. It's a relatively new term, but it gets thrown out a lot. IHC actually chose 2 zip codes within Weber County and 2 zip codes within Washington County to do what they called the Alliance Demonstration Project. and they gave $12 million actually to the community to do a demonstration project. And the whole concept behind that is things like if you don't have heat turned on, if you don't have healthy foods, then it will affect your health at some point. So they're kind of the social determinants of income levels and those sorts of things, but health outcomes specific to that. We do workforce development, really labor utilization, homelessness and housing, which I'll talk to you guys today. It's very specific to you. And then we also do prevention of suicide and substance abuse and all of those types of prevention issues, you name it. We work on the prevention of it. And then we do an intergenerational poverty. And we actually have an innovation that we're testing. We've been doing it for 2 years, and we've shown really great outcomes. So we're pretty excited about that. So our other goals are really to increase our community resilience and then increase our family resilience. And then for our IGP, which is the intergenerational poverty, our whole mission is to create an environment where our children can exercise the power of self-determination. All that means is if they want to be an engineer someday, we just want to make sure that if they have risk factors or if they have any barriers, we want to remove those from them, whether it's equity, whether it's good schools, or you name it. We're just trying to remove those barriers because we want our future to be who they want to be when they grow up. Next picture. So the way homelessness works, or the system works in Utah, all of the monies that come to us through the federal government, it comes through HUD, the Housing and Urban Development. I'm sure you've heard of it already. And the HUD mandates for each state that they have to have a continuum of care. The way Utah does the continuum of care, they have 3 what they call continuums of care. There's the Mountainland LHCCs, which is Local Homeless Coordinating Council. There's a Salt Lake County LHCC, and all the rest of the counties are all put together in what they call the balance of state. So there's 11 counties contained within the balance of state, which Weber and Morgan counties are included in that. And then there's 11 LHCCs, excuse me. There's more counties than that. And then the LHCC is Weber-Morgan combined. So Commissioner Jenkins, well, I'll touch bases on that in a minute. Do you guys have questions? Here's the map. Here's kind of where they lie and the continuum of care and how we're structured and how the monies flow through from HUD to the state.
So real quick, I know when I was down, Austin/Lance had me come down, and I'm new to all this, way more new than Commissioner Newton or Commissioner McConnell, but the understanding is that we were working with Davis County on some of this homelessness. Can you speak to that at all, or what's happening?
If you're okay with it, I will speak to
You'll
it
get there?
specifically.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So the way the state has been formed, the way homelessness has operated, it's been the Homeless Programs Office through the Department of Workforce Services and Community and Housing and Community Development. That all changed with HB 347, which was this legislative session, which basically what that did is that took the Homeless Programs Office, which had a state homeless coordinating council, and our voting member was Mayor Caldwell. And when I say our Weber Morgan Local Homeless Coordinating Council. It's now changed. The State Homeless Coordinating Committee is now called the Utah Homeless Council. It's headed up by what people are jokingly calling a czar of homelessness. It's Lane Niederhauser, and it's governor appointed. So he is the new Utah Homeless Services Coordinator. The Homeless Programs Office has turned into the Office of Homeless Services, and it's no longer a part of Housing and Community Development within the Department of Workforce Services. The other new piece is the Utah Homeless Network. That is for all the LHCCs to join in and talk about policies and strategies. It's how funding will be allocated. RFPs will come through. So HUD will send money to the Continuum of Cares. Continuum of Cares will go to their LHCCs. The LHCCs will run an RFP process, and thus that's how all of the agencies will be funded. Our person who serves the Utah Homeless Network is supposed to be the chair or designee, and the designee is Danielle Stevens. She works for the Center of Excellence. She's the Housing and Homeless Systems Sustainability Coordinator. So, questions about that? Okay, next. So the way we look at homelessness, we really look at it at a housing continuum. We look at it all the way from unsheltered, all the way up to affordable housing and market rate housing. I'm assuming, actually I don't know this, but I'm assuming that you really probably function a lot on this sort of right-hand side, and you probably don't function a lot on the homeless side. But this is everything in between. You can look at homeless housing stability strategies and affordable housing, and then community action planning underneath. So we really incorporate strategies in all of these at all of these levels. The way we do it currently is the Weber Morgan Local Homeless Coordinating Council really tackles homelessness, and you can see that on the top part of that continuum. And then we have the WACOG Housing Panel, and that is the Weber Area Council of Governments. It's all of the mayors and the commissioners who serve Weber County. And we've been actively for over a year talking about affordable housing and strategies for affordable housing. Questions on that? Great.
What have you come up with?
I'm sorry?
What have you come up with on strategies for affordable housing?
We've come up with a lot of talk, but we've talked about ADUs, we've talked about, we have some partnerships with some innovative companies. I'm trying to think, what was the, California? We have some home ownership partnership. I'm sorry? Landed. So Landed is it's a social impact investor where they'll put 20% down with a family to help them, they'll help them get to 20% down up to 20% of that. The homeowner has to put in 3% on the down payment. That gets them past that 20% so that they pay less on closing fees and that sort of thing. So it's a home ownership package. And then they share in the increased valuation of the home once the home is sold or if that family buys it outright. So there's big strategies like that that we've been looking to innovate and bring into Weber County. And then we bring them to the municipalities because typically the municipalities are the ones that would implement those types of strategies. And so if there are some municipalities that actually have a down payment program, and then we have housing authorities also that we work with. So we have a multitude of strategies, and we're more than happy to invite you to the table and share all of our strategies with you.
So it seems like when we have a homeless, I know a couple of people from Morgan that become homeless and they end up in Ogden, it seems like.
Right, yeah.
And is that just normal? They just head there because there's a shelter there that they can go to and eat and...
Yeah, so we have what we consider 6 homeless shelters. They're usually by population. So we have the Your Community Connection, which is the domestic violence shelter for domestic violence. We have the Lantern House, which is the largest homeless shelter in all of Utah with 331 bed capacity. So most people who are individuals and also families who are not domestic violence will go to Lantern House. There's the Ogden Rescue Mission. I can't remember how many beds they have, but they're really a substance abuse program more than anything. They're not just an overnight. And then we have the Community Promise, which really takes a unified approach with different church organizations, and they actually house families at the churches and then teach them skills to get them into home. I'm missing one, Youth Futures. Youth Futures is the youth homeless shelter for youth that are 14 to 24 years old. And they're the only service provider for youth in all of Utah, and they also serve youth in Washington County. But and Veterans Fellowship also takes care of veterans. So they're niched, but Lantern House is pretty much the catch-all, and all are located right now in Austin. So 2 years ago in 2019, there was a strategic plan commissioned for the Local Homeless Coordinating Council. And essentially what the plan showed was homelessness is growing. We're not doing well in terms of our numbers. And it really demonstrated that we had a lack of leadership. So the Weber County Commission actually funded Danielle's position. We created her position and hired her to help unify all of the approaches that we were taking. The other piece was to increase the functioning of the Local Homeless Coordinating Council. I'll talk about that in a minute. and then create consistent collaboration among all the service providers, improve the data quality. Right now, for example, we don't know how many people we have on the streets. As an example, we don't know how long they've been on the streets. So we've been working with some encampments, for example, and a lot of the individuals have been on the streets since 2018. And so how do we get those individuals into services and, off the streets and not camping and alongside the rivers and that sort of thing. And then, obviously, we need to continue to align with state level priorities.
Well, what kind of success
With the encampments or?
with
Or the data?
helping these people become functioning? I mean, the gal I went and picked up from the homeless shelter the other day has been there 2 years, That seems like a really long time. There's no faster transition for them to get in,
It's really individual.
really?
Yeah, and I will say this, it's really hard, there's just not housing right now. There's not housing for people who want to purchase a house, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they're selling before they even go on the market sometimes. And so housing, if you think of that continuum, our supply is extremely low on every single end of that. And then you add to it the component of mental health or substance abuse or, and trauma, really. So, and the longer they're in, not even in shelter, because they're relatively safe in shelter, they're provided medical services and food, and, they're required to shower every day and wash their clothes every day, and, so they have a lot of requirements, but when they're living in encampments, it's a really dangerous environment for them. There's a lot of sexual assaults, and there's a lot of needles and drug use, and so it's, a lot of people, some people, not a lot, I shouldn't say that, there are some community members that say, leave them alone, and, they'll take them tents to go live, but they don't understand that that's just not helpful for them. So we have been relatively successful. We've been actually putting together specialized teams with mental health and caseworkers, social workers, and working with OPD right now within the Ogden area to go to encampments. And we have about a 75% success.
So you try and recruit them?
Absolutely. We do not want them on the streets. So a lot of them want to be, they like to live like that. And so they'll have 24 hours to either vacate. If they don't vacate, then we try to recruit them and get them into the shelter so that we're providing them services.
So you mentioned an increase in numbers. Is it an increase in raw numbers, or is it an increase in the percentage of population? Because
So-
you've got a large influx of just residents into the state.
Right.
So you would expect a raw number increase in homelessness.
Yeah. Yeah, and when the market, right, when you think of that right side, when the market starts to grow, housing becomes less affordable.
Right.
And then you have the middle class that move further down, so they're starting to rent, right, versus own. And so, little by little, especially if COVID happens and then they lose employment, right, they start to become homeless. The point that I was trying to make on this slide in particular is that we really don't have good data at all. And so our big focus, and Danielle actually runs that subcommittee of the Local Homeless Coordinating Council, and we would love to get your input. We would love to do more studies within Morgan if you were interested in that, which is why I'm here today, is to kind of show you what we're doing and then ask you to tell us what you need us to do on your behalf. But that data quality, we don't know how many people are still living with mom and dad, for example, full families. And so, that number, we could give you a number today of how many are showing up in the shelter. We could give you a number today of how many were housed, right? And how many, I'm going to give you a number today of how much money was used with COVID rental assistance. So we have that data, but this is the first time we've had that level of data. And so the Center of Excellence, we function sort of at this systems level so that we can ask each one of those providers to provide that to us, so we can give you sort of this aggregate data so that we can make decisions and look at strategies. So, I'm sorry, that probably didn't answer your question, but.
Well, it did, in the sense that I don't think you have the data to tell me the answer.
Yeah, I probably don't, but I have some that may answer some of your questions a little later on. So this is kind of the work that we've done in the last 2 years. I know this looks like a messy slide, but basically what it is on the left-hand side, 2018, this is what the Local Homeless Coordinating Council looked like I put Weber County Commission up there because Chair Jenkins is the chair of it, so it's not a Weber County thing. It is Weber Morgan Local Homeless Coordinating Council, but Commissioner Jenkins actually chairs it. Before him, it was Commissioner Ebert. And then now in 2021, we have Commissioner Jenkins, who is chairing not only the Welfare Reform Commission inside of Weber County, but a homeless task force, as well as I'm under his portfolio. And then the WACOG Affordable Housing Panel, he is also chairing that. And then what we did is we created a governing board over the Weber Morgan Local Homeless Coordinating Council. We would love to have a representative, if you would like, on that governing board. What that governing board is it's comprised of the chairs of the advisory boards of the voting members of the Local Homeless Coordinating Council. So, for example, we have the Homeless Trust Fund. The chair is former Commissioner Jan Zagmaster, so she serves on that governing board. We have the chair, Bob Hunter of the Weber Human Services. They're a voting member, so he serves on the governing council. And the whole idea there was to create this neutral body to run the RFPs and make sure that we were allocating funding based on data and based on where it needs to go. So, and then that's the Weber Morgan Local Homeless Coordinating Council. And then you can see how it's divided up down below, like veterans, domestic violence, families. So this coordinated assessment, what happens is anybody who is in the shelter or that they know about, they have this system called the Homeless Management Information System. It's a database. And so what happens is people who receive a service now for street outreach, for example, which is a brand new, and you can see that as number 6, unsheltered, we put them in this HMIS system, and so now we can see who got water, who got hygiene kits, did they get a face mask, did they go to Lantern House, and how long and how many days. So that's a part of the data quality piece that we're trying to keep. But part of that is just really making sure that each one of those agencies are entering the information correctly. And can get really, I don't want to say boring, but cumbersome for sure, because a lot of people, you would be surprised how many pieces of data are in that. And then we have a county collaborative where all the executive directors get together, and I chair that, and we're talking really about what's going on, what are the front lines issues, and how do we, whether it's creating advocacy during the legislative session, or at the State Homeless Coordinating Council, or on the Utah Homeless Network, how do we make sure that we get your voices heard, and there's that vertical alignment between policy, funding, and then really what's happening in the front lines and in the communities. Questions on the structure? Okay. It is a requirement, by the way, for it to be an elected official. So, we could certainly look at having a Morgan County official, elected official serve.
What's the meeting?
It's once every other month. So, currently the co-chair is Kevin Eastman, who is the executive director of Weber Human Services.
And you say twice, once every other month, what, as far as what?
That's the
Third Tuesday of,
Third Wednesday of the month at 3 o'clock, 3 to 4:30.
And it's on Zoom too.
And we could, if you're interested in attending tomorrow, we can make sure that that information is forwarded to you.
So that goes to the bottom bullet point here. You currently have the Weber Morgan Health Department that represents both Weber and Morgan, and you also have Weber Human Services that represents Weber and Morgan. And then we had Sarah Swan that was serving as well when her term ended, and I'm not too familiar with your guys' setup, but I think you've moved into commission versus council, and so we're here today to request anyone who would like to sit on the LHCC with us. We'd love to get more representation from Morgan. So that's one of the first asks that we have today. We actually created bylaws, and we do all the time. We do service gaps analysis, housing gaps analysis. So we look at how many rentals are on the market and what's the supply and demand. And so we do have some of that data, and we're happy to share that with you. We were able to help all of our service providers get 1.3 million in state funding in the last cycle. The way they're doing the money now is for the next 2 years, whatever they actually allocated in the 2020 cycle or 2021, I don't remember which year it's called, but this year's cycle, that 1.3, they will extend those contracts for the next 2 years, so we don't have to do another RFP for the next couple of years. And then we actually had to go through the exercise of looking at our priorities, and the priorities are permits for housing prevention, emergency shelter, and rapid rehousing. Next. So this is kind of the data, Commissioner McConnell, that I was kind of referring to. So within Weber, and this hits on your point, Commissioner, in terms of open doors. It's a little skillymunkus because open doors, you can see that at the bottom, they serve Morgan. And so they had a total of $382,000 in CARES ESG CD1 dollars for rental assistance. That's a total amount for Davis County. We don't have it broken down by any Morgan County residents. Because Open Doors isn't on our local homeless coordinating council, they're not, within our county boundaries. I believe what happened was they probably just started to serve you guys, and so when Commissioner Anderson came and we talked to Austin has been sitting on their Davis local homeless coordinating council, but technically you're on ours. So I don't mean you're ours, but you belong to the Weber Morgan local homeless coordinating council technically, and I think by statute really. So
we've always belonged to two, I'm sorry.
So Austin goes to the wrong one? Austin had gone to the wrong one?
Well, I'm thinking that he probably was in the right place because that's how you get your funding.
Because today he just forwarded me information to a Jason Wild.
Yeah, that's the executive director of Open Doors.
Okay.
So if our funding is going to Davis County, yet we're under you, why?
So that's what I'm sharing with you is that the state, the continuum of care, the way the state told HUD that they were doing the continuum of cares and the way they structured the local homeless coordinating councils, the state has mandated that it's the Weber Morgan Local Homeless Coordinating Council. Davis County is its own local homeless coordinating council. That's a state decision. So it's not a Weber decision. I mean, there's nothing the counties can do to ask other than you as a county could certainly call the executive director right now, Tricia Davis, and could certainly inquire and say we want to be somewhere else, and you could probably put some application in. So that's certainly doable. I think it would be a little odd. Well, you could be members, of course, like the lady just mentioned. They're public meetings, and so you don't have. I mean, it's not closed doors.
No, it's open doors.
Literally.
Austin can go there, and I would recommend maybe that he continues because he probably should represent, Morgan County, given that that's how your funding comes through right now. But we would
So
love to
are
have
you suggesting that we make a change and send our funding to you rather than to them?
I'm not suggesting that.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting is that you're part of the Weber Morgan Local Homeless Coordinating Council, and we would love to have a representative come and represent Morgan County on the Weber Morgan Local Homeless Coordinating Council.
So this council was created when? Just this year as part of the legislative session?
Now, we've had it for over a decade.
It's circulated in 2005, part of the last state strategic plan. So the county has always had two representatives on the Weber Morgan Human Services and one on Family Connections, which is now Open Doors. And I can't tell you why, but that's always been what the district, you've always had a board member on the Open Doors.
And those are two agencies underneath the Local Homeless Coordinating Council. So I'd recommend keeping those on the agencies, but that's not the Local Homeless Coordinating Council, if that makes sense. This is a public meeting that is chaired by Commissioner Jenkins. And it's under statute, and so it's just organized this way. So and I don't want to get into politics of making any recommendations, I'm just kind of here to share what exists currently. So that's the amount of money, but you can see Weber County, we do know that we were given $2 million in rental assistance in the half of the RAP programs, $130 for COVID emergency. We ended up increasing from 1 street outreach to 5 street outreach. We have 687 that went to our homeless service providers in Ogden CARES money, 441K that was Weber CARES money. So the Center of Excellence actually oversaw the entire quarantine and isolation facility for the homeless. We helped with all of our service providers doing anything from PPE, writing policies and procedures, how do we test them, how do we, when we had an outbreak, we had to actually mobilize all of the healthy individuals, get them to a motel, pay for it through the CARES Act, and then have the unhealthy, and then converted the Lantern House from the previous Q&I facility into the Lantern House with 96 COVID beds. So we've been a tiny bit busy. We would have been here sooner to Morgan, but we've been a tiny bit busy with the pandemic response. And then SB 165, that is a new law that went in not this session, but the session before. It was sponsored by Senator Escamilla, which actually I think brought all this to light, and Commissioner Anderson, we spoke with him at length and with Austin. It is a requirement for all LHCCs to have an emergency plan specifically for the homeless. And so we have drafted one up. We are happy to do a Morgan emergency plan and a Weber emergency plan, or we have one drafted that's a unified plan between the two. We're happy to share that with you today. If you want to vote on it, we're happy to not just share it later, and you guys can tell us what you think the appropriate structure will be. And then we'll work through our Weber County Commission accordingly as well. So however you guys want to work that, but it is legislated, and so we as a Center of Excellence would like to meet the mandate of the legislation, and the Homeless Programs Office has been asking us to get it in. So they gave us an extension, well, they not just us, they gave everybody an extension because of the pandemic, but it was due really before the pandemic. And so we would like to button that up and make sure that we have that as a completed thing. You can see COVID impact. We do have data around the total number of positive homeless cases. We had 146. Total tests, 1,257. Total people, 925. Hospitalizations, 8. We had 4 deaths. 1 still pending investigation if it was actually COVID related. And then we still currently have 1 person who is tested positive, and they are quarantining in the Lantern House in the Q&I facility. Oh, that's it. Sorry, that's it. So I'm all done. I'm happy to answer even more questions. And Commissioner Anderson, did I answer enough of what you...
Yeah, no, this is all 100% new for me, so, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's good.
Do we have an idea if we have any homelessness in Morgan County? Does anybody know?
What do you call homelessness? Yes, we do.
Do we?
They've been going to Ogden, but
Okay. Okay, I didn't know.
yeah.
So the Lantern House actually serves all of northern Utah. So Lantern House actually serves Davis County. They serve Brigham County. They serve Logan and Cache County. So they're the only homeless shelter really in all of northern Utah. Other than that, they're in Salt Lake. So the Weber Morgan Homeless Coordinating Council actually does a lot of work in all of northern Utah.
And you give, if I'm understanding this right, you also gave rental assistance to people during this COVID time, or is that a normal thing all the time?
No, so what that is that was a COVID response, and that was CARES money, and the way the state decided to do that is they decided, so the way, there's entities that are nonprofits that are called community action partnerships, and that's what Open Doors is. They're called a CAP agency. In Weber, we have the Ogden-Weber Community Action Partnership. In Salt Lake, they have the Utah Community Action Partnership. So they have CAPs all over Utah. So what the state decided to do was run all their CARES money through the CAPs because they could distribute it statewide. And so our $2 million came through the CAP. Because Open Doors serves you, any rental assistance, if it came to Morgan, would have come through Open Doors because they are the CAP agency. We just don't have access to that information because Open Doors isn't a part of our local homes coordinating council. So again, I think it is a little skillywampus because I think they've been serving you for a while, and so we're not suggesting they don't serve you. We're just suggesting that the structure is that you're part of our local homes coordinating council. So we're happy to serve you in any way that you would like. We're happy to get with Mr. Wild, and I know him, and so I'm happy to get with him and have a chat, or we can, you can provide me a representative, and we can facilitate conversation.
And I've left a message with him, so
Perfect.
I'll talk to him too.
Perfect. So the only other question I have is just the emergency plan and how you might like to deal with that.
Well, I don't think we could vote on it tonight, but you could certainly get it to us, we can review it, and then put it on an agenda for approval.
Okay?
And then a representative. Is there someone that would like to do that?
Well, if it's every other month, I do the Weber Human Services already, so I don't mind doing it.
Okay. Commissioner Wilson's your representative.
Should I resend the emergency plan to,
Member
To
Wilson?
commission.
Commission, the
dash
entire
county
commission.
dot net.
so if I send it to you, you can? Okay. I just need everybody's email, so I'll
Sure.
send it to whoever wants it. Okay, great. And do you want the combined Weaver Morgan?
That seems to make the most sense.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys all have copies? I have four.
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't make them.
Thanks for coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, this is the emergency plan.
Yes.
Okay. You want to take,
Here, I'll just
give him one and
I'll
then-
give him one.
We do have enough?
Sorry?
I only had four, so.
Okay.
No worries.
So who needs the other one?
We can make a copy for.
You're good.
members.
If she emails it too, I'll have an electronic
Yeah.
copy.
Yeah,
I'm
I'd rather have
not
it
super
emailed.
concerned.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just said it had too much, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's grown.
Let's see. Should we do our two action items and then maybe we can take a break?
Sure.
All right. First action item is Darrell Rupp, Morgan Valley Car Show Committee, request exemption from deposit rental permits and insurance. Request that Morgan County assist with funding to promote and organize the car show. Mr. Rupp.
I guess this is where I'm supposed to be.
That's a great place to be.
Can you turn that? Thank you. I can review what our request is if you'd like. I think you've received it written in advance. The bottom line is, we held a car show in 2019 that had a very, very positive response. This is a flyer from that show,
Thank you.
just to give you an idea of what we did then. We were going to have a show in 2020 as well, but as all things COVID happened, I don't know whether you want to talk about that. First of all, I apologize for the tremors. I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and the more anxiety I experience, the more extreme my symptoms become, so.
Well, we don't intend to cause you any anxiety, so.
That's for sure. Be distracting. I looked up to see who was on the council before I came, and I was comfortable with everyone except for Matt. His looked so ornery and mean. I should perhaps withhold my position on the agenda for the time that perhaps he was going to be absent. But anyway, years ago, the Burwells and the Harrises up in Porterville held a community car show, and it was was just something that they did because they loved cars and they invited other people who loved cars. Ultimately, it got to the point where the health of Jack and Cliff was to the point where they couldn't do the car show anymore. Their wives didn't want to continue it, so there was a group of like-minded volunteers who said, perhaps we can continue it. And so we went to the city at that time and got their co-sponsorship to hold the show in 2019, which is what the flyer indicates. The response was so favorable that we didn't have enough room for parking. We filled the parking lot at the city park, and we filled the street along the front of the park there. And so we felt that there was a need to change, and so it only made sense that we move the venue to the Morgan County Fairgrounds. We've already reserved the date, but we still have the funding issues that we need to worry about in order to promote it and make sure that everything happens. When the city co-sponsored with us, they waived the fees as co-sponsors for utilizing the park. And the short story tonight is we're basically asking the same thing of the county. We're asking you to waive the fees associated with the show because the show is a volunteer community event. There's no charge for people who are exhibiting their cars or tractors or trucks or motorcycles or ancient motors or whatever interests them. And there's no charge for the spectators who come to see and enjoy the vehicles and other equipment that's on display. And I don't know how much you're aware, but there are a lot of really, really nice classic cars and other tractors and other equipment in the county that don't get shared with the public as much as we would like to see that happen. So unless there are specific questions, that is our request, is that the county co-sponsor the car show with us, and in the course of doing that, waive the fees that are associated with utilizing the fairground for that one day.
So the cost of sponsorship is simply the waiver of the fees?
Yes. If the city did contribute some additional monies to help us with flyers and the other incidental expenses that come from putting on such an event, if the county was so inclined to participate in that manner as well, and we're certainly not going to turn them down. As it is right now, we'll have to go out and try to find sponsors in order to be able to cover some of those expenses.
What's the amount of those expenses, Darrell?
We don't know, to be honest with you.
What did the city spend last time, do you know?
The city put up $300 last time, and we didn't use all of that.
Okay.
But some of our committee members incurred expenses and then didn't submit them for reimbursement. And that's why I have to say I don't know a good number, because we didn't get all of the receipts back from the expenses we incurred. We assume that if we didn't have the expenses for utilizing the fairgrounds, that $300 to $500 is what we'll need, and we'll have to generate that in some way. And then whatever extra we have left over, we've already talked about that in order to make good on our position that it be a community event and not a profitable event, that money would go to the food bank or someone else or back to the county if the county was contributing money or something like that. But it would be inappropriate for us to retain that money going forward.
I have one question. What about, I saw it said that waive insurance. Now, I don't know what the insurance is. I'm assuming that if something were to get damaged on one of these cars while parked at that they have insurance on their cars?
They certainly have insurance on their cars. Yeah, it's just the overall liability insurance that becomes.
That we normally provide.
Is
what
what
you're
the
saying.
facility.
Okay.
That trying to buy an individual policy for an individual
Sure.
event is insurmountable. And that's what prompted us to seek the co-sponsorship.
Morgan County asks that anybody that uses our property to hold an event provide liability insurance in the amount of $1 million.
Oh.
So that if a child is playing on a car and gets stuck in the gears and gets their arm ripped off, it holds the county harmless of. So what he's asking for is a waiver that we don't request him. So if you read the information he provided, he's asking that the county waive the necessary application to provide the liability insurance with a minimum amount of $1 million.
The assumption.
Who provides that for us, Stacy?
They have to provide it to us. We don't provide it
So,
to
but
them.
I think one of the things that was in the materials was that if we co-sponsored, that it would fall under our liability policy.
Exactly.
Because it's our event, not
But-
somebody else's.
But I would like to confirm that with our carrier. Because if that's the case, I don't have an issue with that. I just want to make sure.
That's the way it was with the city.
Yeah, I just don't want to have it be
Their policy is
uninsured.
Co-sponsor, and so we assumed that would
Right.
be similar
We don't want that.
with the county, but.
I would think that would be the case. I mean, we
What
have
happens at
Fourth
the
of
county-
July activities
county
there, and
fair?
we do that with the county fair. So I would think if it's a
Yeah.
county event, it's probably okay.
That makes
Right.
all the intuitive sense in the world.
We just need to
verify it, to make
But when
sure.
you're talking insurance companies, intuitive sense doesn't mean.
Matt has said, none of this makes sense.
So I see these events as an opportunity for some economic development. It brings people to
Oh,
town,
yeah.
they spend money, right? So
Sure.
my suggestion is pending our approval or our looking into insurance and making sure that that is the case, I would suggest, and maybe this is my motion here, if you guys are okay with it, that we do co-sponsor the event, and as such, there are no fees because it's our facility and it's just a Morgan County event in conjunction with a volunteer group.
Right.
And also that we provide up to $500 in funding to help with advertising and incidental costs for the event
From our.
from our economic development funds.
From our Economic Development Board.
The other way that the county will potentially generate some revenue is there will be food vendors, and they will have to pay for the permits to be able to vend food, and then there's a tax, I believe, associated with whatever they sell while they're vending food at a county event. And so there is possible for some generation of taxes as a result of the event as well.
Yeah, that's exactly why I support it as an economic development item. So-
And I'll second that.
So there's our motion.
Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Newton, seconded by Member Fackrell, to approve the county's co-sponsorship of the Morgan Valley Car Show Committee, and in connection with that, waive fees associated with use of the county fairgrounds, and to provide up to $500 of funding from the Economic Development Fund account. Is there any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And then Daryl, just so you're aware, the way that would work for the funding, if you'll just submit any receipts to Stacy in her office, she'll take care of them and reimburse.
And
And
then
I would follow up to make sure that the insurance issue has been resolved.
Yeah, Stacy, will you check on that and then just let
And
us
then
know?
you'll contact me, Stacy, and let me know if that's the case.
I don't cause you anxiety.
The city also had someone sit on our committee, so we know you're busy, but if you'd like to invite if you'd like to have some county representation on the committee, we welcome that. We meet every other week in the conference room at the city office building, if you want to send a representative to that.
What time? What time is that at normally?
That's at 7:30. The next one is it's this Thursday.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, I'll do that if you want. Send me a reminder email. What night was it again? I haven't-
Thursday.
Yeah, I can probably do it.
City
Okay.
office conference room.
City.
I'll send you an email.
Thank you.
You might need to send him an email after he leaves his home, too. He's getting up there.
You're right.
If we have any money left over, we'll fund a new picture for him.
It might be upside down the way I work with IT stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So it's next week, right?
This, I thought he said this Thursday.
This Thursday?
This Thursday.
Darrell, that was this Thursday?
This Thursday,
Is the meeting, or is it, it's not next week, okay.
this Thursday.
Okay, our next item, this is commission resolution for the transfer of funds from Fund 24 Flood Fund. Member Newton, do you want to take this?
Yeah, this is what we talked about in the past, and after our administrative discussion where we talked about allocating a total of $120,000 towards emergency management equipment. This resolution is just to transfer funds from Flood 24 to the emergency management budget line item to be used for equipment.
Okay.
ECR 2105.
CR
Put in
21.
your basket what we think are, if we've got everything up and working right. A new financial statement on page 22 is the most current, I believe, current balances. And that balance will be $279,918.99.
Okay, and right now, we're only going to transfer 120 of that, so the remaining amount will stay in that fund. Now, this resolution does say that eventually that fund will be closed, but not yet, if that makes sense, not until we transfer all of the funds out.
Just a comment as to the form, just where it says, next to approved as to form, well, and by my name, you've got county council chair and council members, so.
Are you doing that on purpose?
I didn't write it.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh, you're saying yes because it's somebody that...
Because of somebody else that did it.
I see.
We're really,
Wayne.
we're really slowing
will.
the change of.
There was a lot of things in the next one that has council in it.
So,
And we can still approve it, we just need to,
Change
before I
that
sign
name.
it, we can fix it. There was one in here today that,
So I'll fix that right now while we're in here, and I'll add you said 21-05, right?
Correct.
I guess it goes without saying that those budget, or those line items, those purchase items will come before us.
They will. Anything
correct.
exceeding $5,000 must come before us.
and go ahead and leave the name of the county attorney blank while you're doing that.
Okay.
And so while you're talking about that, did you notice too?
Yes, I noticed. So, we had talked about discussing the candidates as part of a closed session. We're not going to be able to do that.
Oh, no, I meant
No.
part of the next item. Most of the paper, there's Jan's names in a lot of the paperwork in the
Yeah.
next item.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh, sorry, okay.
Sorry.
I thought it was just in response to the county attorney comment, so.
No, I meant.
I got off track.
The paperwork of the next item.
Okay, so we need a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution to transfer of funds from Fund 24 to Fund, I wrote it on the,
To see, no, to emergency,
It's emergency management budget line item 10-4255-610-000.
so moved.
second,
Copy and paste.
And it was in the amount of $120,000.
$120,000.
Okay,
I'll second the motion.
and it was resolution number
2105.
2105. So we have a motion by Commissioner Wilson, seconded by Commissioner Newton, to approve Resolution CR-2105 to transfer funds from Fund 24, the Flood Fund, in the amount of $120,000 to the Emergency Management Fund. And I didn't get that whole number, but any questions on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, we'll take a break. Do we need to wait till 6 o'clock to do the public hearing? Okay, so we'll reconvene at 6 o'clock.
Did you get the email I sent last night?
That gives you time, Commissioner Anderson, to go over
Yeah,
everybody
about
a
this
tangent.
thing.
About,
So can we discuss it but not do the hearing until 6?
Yeah, he suggested that if you wanted to, and he sees Zions, I don't see out of the way, that if you wanted to, he could make the presentation as long as you didn't put the public hearing until 6.
Okay, let's do that. Let's come back at,
Quarter 2 or something?
yeah, 5:50, and then we'll do the presentation, and then we can do the public hearing at 6 o'clock. 5:50 it is, going once, twice.
Do we have to do a motion to recess for a minute?
No,
Okay.
I guess we can, I don't care.
No, it's okay. I was just curious whether or not it was official or not.
So do you see this though?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying when we were in the meeting. I was wondering if we could do it or not.
No, the thing is this is a closed session, not an administrative session. Closed session
Right,
is our-
but we can't discuss character, professional competence, or physical or mental health in closed, which means, well, we didn't do that.
We didn't do that.
We were going to
We were
do
gonna
that
do it
tonight, but
tonight.
apparently we can't. So we're going to have to either make a discussion, so we're going to have that as an open discussion item. I guess we can do that.
Can we
It's
discuss
not
it
on the
here? We
agenda.
just can't make a decision on it?
Or we could, I assume we could just do an administrative meeting
And discuss it?
and discuss it, and then we don't, it's not as part of the regular agenda.
Can we make it an item of new business? Which is not on the agenda.
Yeah, because the question, I mean, do we have to wait till our next meeting to actually enact it?
It's away before we get an adjournment.
2 more weeks?
Or we have an administrator, or we can just,
But we can't appoint him unless it's in an open session, can
Can I approach the bench?
we? May.
I was like a real judge, you even knocked me down.
We're in recess, so
Okay. You don't have to cover that up.
I just wanted to make sure.
I just want you guys to know, when I sat on the county council, I was a voting member of the Davis County Open Doors,
So that means,
Family Connections.
so in other words, we should be part of Davis County then.
In other words, we are part of Davis.
well, except her explanation was that is one of their administrative providers,
Who is?
Davis County Open Doors. So that's like YCC up in Ogden.
Yeah, I know.
They're a provider, but we're part of the, whatever they call that.
Morgan Weaver Health, whatever it was.
We don't pay any money.
This is separate. This is separate.
Yeah, no, it would be a separate thing.
Okay, who sits on the Weaver, or the Davis County board? Would it be Matt?
It's Matt.
Or Jared?
No, it's Matt. He's got that.
For Weaver Morgan Human Services, it's,
Jared and Matt?
yeah.
Jared
Bobby,
and-
if Bobby is assigned family
Which- what
connection
is-
or open doors.
Matt is Workforce Services and Health
Well,
is,
Workforce Services would
Jared.
be who we, yeah.
I think Jared is Health Services too. So we need to really look at combining some of these portfolios because we're getting all over the
And
place.
maybe, yeah, if you want, I can get you Jason Wild's contact
Matt
info.
has it, because Matt said he
Yeah.
got it, Jason.
I
That
sent
one
it
had a
today.
notary requirement.
That's a good one. I just fixed the minutes
Yeah.
from.
There it is. It's Matt on both of them.
Okay.
It's not Jared. Okay?
Perfect, all right.
I didn't mean to interject, Robert, but I know history. And she's presented to me 3 times, I don't know why I'm that lady. She's presented the Senate Exodus to me 3 times on the legal side.
No, I don't have a problem with you interjecting, because
I
it's
like
good
attending
information to
from home
have.
better, because then I can just yell at the screen and the TV goes through. But there is a role, and I just don't want to, I don't, the people, when there's an emergency, they don't always go to YCC. Sometimes they go to Open Door. If there's an abuse situation, Open Door is there for them, and they have an emergency room situation where they can, an emergency babysitter situation. And so there are people that go use those services at Open Doors because it's closer than, and they don't necessarily need the services of
Of
Lantern
YCC.
House.
Yeah.
They just need those emergency services as they're getting out. I don't
So,
know
but we
if
didn't
that-
call Open Doors on here.
It's
No,
Family
we don't.
Connections on there.
Well, it'd be,
Because it used to be called Family Connections, and Tracy, or Stacy just
is that
as
just down here? That's you?
It's right here.
Yeah, we had Family Connections on there.
So we've got this one up here, Community Services and Human Services. And then down here, you get this one.
So Family Connections is now called Open Doors.
Open Doors.
And they also have a food bank that they used to come up and do our food bank before we got some new ones.
Okay.
So I just would hate to lose that connection and that service. It's something that community.
Well, and I didn't take it, like I said, I didn't take it as mutually exclusive by any
And
means.
I was like, maybe there's something I don't understand, because we don't pay anything to Open Doors as a county.
Yeah, they're state funded. Or that they receive grants and so forth. We pay money to YCC.
And we were more
Almost to where I
than,
can go and use it.
so part of our tax dollars goes to We Were More Than Human Services, and part of it goes to, there's a formula that they use for the We Were More Than Account for it that we pay them out of our taxes.
Hey,
But that Center
This
for
you can sit in
Excellence
these
is
chairs.
supposed to be.
Yeah.
It
There
was
you go.
supposed to, when it
Those
was
are not
created
fun.
2 years ago, come out of the We Were More Than Human Services fund.
Which we already participate in
Yeah,
funding.
so I just didn't see what she was, there's something in the state formula that I don't understand, because it's different. I don't think we were doing anything wrong in participating, that was, we can go to either county or these services.
Now she is working for the DI, and she's in a, which is a weird thing to me. I moved her to a house that has 4 bedrooms, and every door has a lock on it, and they just use the community kitchen dining, and everybody has a room, a room. For people from 50 years old that are in their 20s.
She's single.
But, Stacy was gonna get, how do you get Glenn number? She did.
No.
Church leaders. Are you gonna call him? 'Cause I'm happy to call him.
You know how, but we wanted you to be involved, it's not our decision. You know when you supposed to make recommendations.
But after talking and realizing how much stuff was left out there and want that out, it's a big area. It's pretty good.
And it's gotten bigger, so when we originally had the agreement with the city and there was nothing in writing, we needed the office here that we were using, so they had space in the basement. And we just put in a divider for that little office, and there were some shelves. It wasn't, it was, when Debbie and I went down there, there was never, and the city had never said that we could use that much space that I'm aware of. Because they have, they wanted,
1,500 square feet, maybe for that.
they had intentions of doing offices down there at some point.
Yeah. So they want it out, if
Yeah.
city does. And we don't have a place here, so.
So, Open Doors has a food bank, and I talked to their interim director, I'm not sure who the director is now, I talked to their interim director back last year. And we forwarded some information to Michael and Sarah with all the rules that they should be following. But they asked us if they would be willing to help us to, you know, but we suggested it should be a private policy. See that one.
What's the IT situation?
Here in the community. They want to work with.
And that's what I thought about Grace Bell.
Yeah, we've got a,
I just see my new thought.
Yeah, no one.
Through the thing.
we've got a third party that we're planning on getting under contract.
Just in case you're dabbing here and see.
Yeah, talk to him. We'll try to get someone from the church and see if we can get him.
Even if we could get a small stash here for emergencies.
That's where we had literally the top three in those unlimited areas. You need anything in writing, that's their contribution, what we have to pay. So majority of the system is about it.
Well, they've been offered another government rent that space, so they're trying to, they want to finish off the rent.
Yeah, I agree with that. We'll try to get.
Oh, man, I gotta find the computer charged up enough.
Speaking of, Cindy, if I don't write this down, I write things down, I'll remember it for 30 years, but if I don't write it down, I
You
will.
type right up and you share all kinds of information. You've got a ball there.
Okay,
Just show me some outline stuff.
so can we discuss who we select or anything?
One more. What Mike just said. I don't think Glenn does.
Hey, you already got it done. Sweet. Make sure I made all the corrections right. I think I did.
Well, I didn't do that, I should print.
Don't start yet, 2 seconds.
Stacy, why were there so many cabs?
I don't know what you're talking about, Tina. I don't know what you're talking about.
So,
Never answered.
So can we, so on the county attorney position, it's not on our agenda. We can hold an administrative meeting afterwards and discuss what we want to do.
But we can't appoint them until 2 weeks from now. Are we losing out? Can we? Well, that's what I'm asking, is whether or not we can do it in a different,
we could hold a special commission meeting
yeah?
if we wanted, right?
Yeah.
And appoint them then, with just that one item on the agenda.
Open session?
I would assume so, because it's a public action, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I would think they'd have to be appointed in a public meeting.
That's just the open meeting stuff. I don't.
it does say character and competence. If we don't talk about their character or competence, then
Yeah, that's, other than the fact
we
that
kind of already did that in our
it's
administrative
discussed
meeting. But
filling a midterm vacancy. That's the only thing, is it's going to be discuss filling a midterm vacancy or temporary absence governed by Title 20. So,
it could be.
we can't add anything to the agenda?
I'm totally confused with these.
Or do you
Not
have
if
to
it
do?
requires public notice.
That's the issue. And so that means if we go into a special session, you still have to give 24 hours.
But if we do administrative, then we just do it after.
We can discuss it, but we can't appoint.
We weren't planning on appointing.
It's so that they can set up their own public infrastructure district, but when I read it, I'm trying to
Yeah, we were gonna
understand
have
all
a
of
closed
what's
session, then
including
bring it
that infrastructure.
Back to have a regular.
Right.
That's what I thought we were gonna do.
Oh, no, I
It's in
didn't,
the Mountain Green
I didn't think we were
Town
going to
Center area.
Oh, okay. That
I didn't know
was-
what the regulation was to it.
Basically,
Yeah.
what it does,
I don't know either.
and they can go put in the infrastructure, so the streets and the water and sewer lines and such. And then the people who buy property within that, so if you build a home there, or buy a home there,
They can charge.
you have an extra line item on your property tax. It's kind of a new tool that the state enacted a couple of years ago.
Because I really hate to take somebody's name and put it
It's a
to
way
a
for
public discussion.
developer to recoup
I
some
don't think
costs.
that's right.
So it's not a bad
Part of
No, and it doesn't affect other residents of the county. It affects.
allows things to move forward with.
Okay, let's go ahead and
If people are willing to put up the money.
start.
The developer.
We've got the, a public hearing on the proposed creation of the Rome, ROAM Public Infrastructure District Number 1 and Rome Public Infrastructure District Number 2, and to allow for public input on whether the requested service is needed in the area of the applicable proposed district, whether the service should be provided by the county or the proposed district, and 3, all other matters relating to the proposed districts. So let's go ahead and have a presentation on what this is from staff and/or the applicant, and then we can open the public hearing. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing us and council members. We appreciate the time. Kind of a clarification, we've referred to this project as the basin for some time. And, as we're finalizing our preliminary submittals, we're making a change in, from a marking standpoint, it will be called Rome. So just wanted to make sure that's kind of understood. As outlined by the development agreement, we're pursuing the PID, the public infrastructure.
What's the origin of that name?
Yeah, you're asking the wrong person.
Okay.
I know we sort of have a brand with the many master plan communities and our marketing people. I'll come back and report back.
So it's not an acronym?
No,
Okay, all right,
Oh, okay.
not an acronym.
all right.
So we can move to Rome.
So in other words, in this, you're changing the name of the development agreement from what it used to be, the basin, to now Rome?
This doesn't have anything to do with the development agreement.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need to change the name if the contracting party's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, I just wondered.
So as dictated by as mentioned in the development agreement, we want to pursue this public infrastructure district. I've invited Gilmore Bell, Aaron Wade, as bond counsel. He's here to help make this presentation, as well as Japheth McGee. He's on, I believe, Zoom, right there. And he's the municipal financial advisor for the county to answer any specific questions. As part of this PID, there's a significant amount of infrastructure that needs to be done to service this particular project. Offsite costs are probably multi-million dollars. We're, I think, on the hook right now for about $3.5 million of offsite infrastructure in order to construct this project. That offsite infrastructure obviously is for this, but there is a global benefit, specifically in the culinary water systems. It will help the lower water zones from the water company in that area. So there is a little bit of benefit there. I'm here for any questions. In fact, I'll defer to Mr. Wade. He can maybe get into the more technical aspects of the PID, any questions you guys might have before the public hearing. Eric, do you want to step forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So in connection with this, request, there's been submitted, both a petition signed by the property owners here requesting the creation of the district, and that's what's kind of facilitated the scheduling of the public hearing. Public notice, a mailer under state law has gone out to the property owners within the boundaries of the district, so they've received notice of this meeting, and also acknowledged that they had notice as well. But a petition's been filing requesting the creation of the district. Letter of intent was filed. I know that Marcus Geller, who with Zions Public Finance, has been reviewing, the various applications and kind of spearheading the review efforts on the part of the county. And so what's before you on the agenda today? Obviously, the public hearing that we can start in a few minutes here to receive any public input that folks might have on the creation of a public infrastructure district. But the real kind of meat of what's before you is approval of the creation of the districts themselves. So here, as was mentioned, there's two separate districts, Rome Public Infrastructure District Number 1 and District Number 2. And the purpose behind the two districts is just to allow one district for the residential development and one district for the commercial development. And it's likely, and the current plan of finance calls for these two districts to issue together jointly, just for savings on cost of issuance and legal fees and all of those things. But it would allow the districts to each levy a distinct property tax. So as you know, the county can't, choose to levy a tax of a certain rate in one city and a different rate in another city. The county has a generally applicable property tax that's the same. But kind of due to the market demands and just the different kind of price points for property taxes, they feel it's best if the commercial district and the residential district could set independent rates. But then again, they would bond together jointly and pledge their property taxes together to the payment of the debt. And happy to field any questions I go along.
So I thought that you could set different rates within a PID even if you had a single district.
So it's still a subject to those uniform rules for the application of the property tax.
But when you separate into districts, you have two separate, I'll call them tranches of improvements that you're putting in.
Yeah.
Of a similar type, right? I mean, if we look at your map, you've got a road that's coming through the center of the commercial area up to the residential area. Is that an improvement? What district's doing that, or are they both doing it, just the portion with, I mean, that road's already there.
Sure, that one's been by the school district.
There's another one that comes around the perimeter of the commercial area.
Yeah. So typically what will happen is that the two districts would enter into some kind of a cost-sharing agreement where they would agree how the bond proceeds are spent so that each district feels like it's being treated fairly in what it's getting. But I think in this kind of joint effort, the districts are recognizing that they're both benefiting from the improvements, and maybe Barry can speak more to that if he'd like, but generally that, District Number 1 and District Number 2 are both okay with kind of the overall improvements going in for both districts. And so it would be a joint bond that both districts would be responsible to repay rather than kind of allocating, like an assessment bond, you kind of allocate to each parcel a certain amount. Instead of the property tax bond, it's just each property is responsible for their individual annual property taxes until the entire bond has been paid off. There's not like a, $10,000 to this lot, $15,000 to this lot.
Right. But I guess maybe I misunderstood. I thought a single district could impose a different mill levy on different type of owners. All your residential might need to be the same.
Yeah, so all the...
But your commercial could be a different mill levy and accomplish it in a single public infrastructure district.
At least for the typical PID, I'm not sure if, maybe like MIDA or some of the other entities might have some different things like that, but I know for these districts, it's a uniform, it'd be a uniform rate for each district.
And then you mentioned that the owners had received notice. All of the owners are applicants, right?
Yeah, so they're the ones actually asking.
Because you have to have 100% of the owners to create it.
Yeah, that's correct. So they've consented to it, and in that consent, they also said, we acknowledge there's a public hearing, we acknowledge receipt of notice of the public hearing, because, again, they're the ones saying, do this for us. So they're on board, but still to comply with the letter of the law, Stacy did, send out a notice to them. So thank you for that.
Okay.
So I have a question on this. As you're doing this and you're creating this PID, is this going to raise, this tax that they're going to be paying, how long does that tax go for?
Sure. So the tax will exist for the life of the bonds, which is, the typical is 30 years. The governing document we proposed asks for a maximum of 31 years, but that's more just so that, if you issue in, July, they could mature in August, and you're not bumping up against a extra month requirement or something like that. But when they issue 30-year bonds. But the allowance is that typically there'll be a 30-year bond with an additional 10-year runway in case that, let's say they build 10 houses and we have another recession and no other houses get built for 5 years or so. They're not going to generate enough property taxes to be currently paying their bonds. So what typically happens is the investors agree to a 30-year bond, but they get an additional 10 years to make up for any missed payments. But at the end of that 40 years, if the bonds have not been repaid, that property tax still goes away so that the land isn't perpetually burdened by the tax. But under the assumptions and what the market study will show before they issue the bonds, it'll prove out that they should be able to pay off the bonds in 30 years. So the plan will be 30 years, district goes away. Worst case scenario, it would be 40 years, but even if the district still owed, half of the money at year 40, once it rolls over in that 41st year, the tax would go away regardless. And the bondholders buy knowing that that's their risk.
Is that, that's disclosed to them right up front
Yeah.
as they purchase a lot?
Yeah, so, sorry, so this is the
bond.
investors.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm talking about like the.
What about the ones paying the bond off?
Yeah, so in the governing document itself, there is a notice requirement section of what's required, to happen to let the property owners know. And what's been proposed, and under state law as well, is that there's like a recording, a notice of the district. And what we've added in addition is, a paragraph on that recording that would say, for every $100,000 of taxable value, so that would account for whether or not you're getting the primary residential or your business, for every $100,000 of taxable value, there would be up to a $600 annual tax. And so that's going to get recorded on the property. And we recognize that there's a lot of people that might not pay attention to what's recorded on the property. So the other thing that we proposed in the governing document is that CW, as they're actually selling this property, would have a separate page that they give and required to be signed from those initial, lessors of the commercial space or purchasers of the commercial space, and to the homeowners that actually come in and are buying the lots from them. So, there's no way to make sure notice is perfect. There's always people that miss their HOA or miss things like that. But, we've taken what the statutory requirement is and then also expanded upon that to give the best opportunity, for folks.
Well, I appreciate you doing that, because I hate small print.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, Aaron, the way I understand this will work is the county will collect that tax and then remit it, I assume, through Zions, and they'll pay back the bondholders. Is that kind of the way it works? Or maybe through another entity?
So you're exactly right. So it would just be an additional line item on the property tax. You'd see the county, the school district, the public infrastructure district. It's the same 5-year abatement process, the penalties and things like that for non-payment. But yeah, it's the ordinary process that the other taxing entities go through. And then that money, as you mentioned, would be forwarded to either the district, who would then be required to give it to the bond trustee, or it would just go directly to the bond trustee, just depending on how it gets set up. But it will be that a sophisticated depository bank is holding on to this money, and it's not something that's just going into the cash drawer of the developer or anything like that.
So I guess my question is there any administrative costs that the county we will have additional administrative costs because it's an extra thing that we're remitting? Is there any funding that comes to the county to help cover any of that administrative cost?
So it should, I think it would just be the levy that the county auditor sets. I'm not 100% familiar with their process, but they set kind of a rate of what they need to meet their collections. But there isn't contemplated a portion of the district's tax going directly to another entity. And I think where it falls under the same procedures for tax, it shouldn't increase the burden too much more. It would just be an additional taxing entity reporting hey, this is our mill levy this year, please put it on the tax roll. And there might be some additional foreclosure, but it would just be the same people that aren't paying their property tax to the county aren't paying their property tax to the district. It would be, one proceeding for all of those layers of amenities.
What improvements are you looking to finance with the PID?
So we're limited to qualified expenses. You can't just do anything. They have to be public expenses. They have to be public infrastructure. So that's the first and foremost. So, for example, we have in our townhome section a pool house and a pool. That's going to be private to the townhome, so that will not be financed. Really what this is going to help primarily with is a lot of the water infrastructure that's needed to bring to the site. In addition, there's some storm drain that we have to extend down to Cottonwood Creek through a UDOT easement. It's kind of a large diameter pipe, I think 30 to 48 inches, what's being contemplated by the engineers now. That's for the school. The school comes down to a retention pond. We need to extend that down to Cottonwood Creek. So those are the two larger items. In addition, any qualified expenses within the development will also qualify. Those would be public infrastructure related. So.
Is that just runoff? For runoff?
The storm drain, yeah.
Wow. 30 to 48 inches.
A lot of water.
Yeah, because right now the school generates a bunch. It comes down that existing road and it kind of goes into a retention basin there. So not only what we generate do we have to take, we also have to take whatever the school generates. When they have bigger parking lots, so we got to take that down. We got to go down to Cottonwood Creek. There's also Highway 30, it's a little bit bigger of a road and it'll be improved. So whatever runoffs generated within Highway 30 has to be accounted for. I want to say they're planning for additional runoff. I mean, anything, excuse me, we have the corner lot, which is about 8 acres, which will eventually run through that pipe. So we're trying to master plan.
And is that a county easement that you're sending that down, or is that an easement that's been?
It's UDOT property.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, they've acquired it for the interchange. So they've acquired quite a bit of property there. And so we've worked with David Algero and his right-of-way department to get permission to run that storm drain through there.
Sorry, real quick to interrupt. I thought my phone wasn't, it looks like Japheth got kicked off of the Zoom.
He's went back in.
Oh, he's back on.
He's not back yet, but I saw that it went away. I restarted the meeting. I don't know why it stopped.
Okay, I'll let them know. Sorry
Oh,
to
he just
be on my phone.
jumped back in. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, and so some additional things to keep in mind when it comes to the qualified expenses for the infrastructure. It's not just any expense. We have to pass that through. Zines will have to approve it. There's sort of a process to make sure that the expense qualifies under the PID's regulations and the government documents.
So is that going to make it to where somebody's taxed out of their home, basically? I mean, you're adding another $600 onto our fees now. They're basically, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, they never get rid of it.
Yeah, so it'll be disclosed up front, and there may be people who elect not to buy in the neighborhood because of the additional, that additional tax. It'll be, call it a $400 or $400,000 home, it'll be $1,200 a year, or $100 a month.
And here I thought this development
Is it an HOA also?
was going to be a
It's
affordable
HOA
housing.
To boot, huh?
Well, if the market works appropriately, which is only a guess, right? It's a theory.
Sure.
Then by virtue of the disclosure, someone acquiring a home here takes into consideration the fact that they have a higher burden related to payment of these payments, which should result in a reduced price of the home. The other thing that it does is if you don't have that situation, developers don't do this not to make money. And they would have done the same level of improvements and built it into the price of the lot and or the home.
Regardless.
Yeah, and then if you, and so it spreads that cost out over a longer period of time. And since the average occupancy of home is only 7 years, then, you know, the owner pays their 7/40ths of it, call it, or 7/30ths of it. And so that's all theoretical.
I'm just
But
trying to
that's the way
understand
the
it.
market forces potentially work with this kind of a project.
And in a lot of ways, the PID can provide a cheaper form of financing for the developer. You know, they can finance at tax exempt rates, which are, for these types of districts initially, 5.5%, compared to, I don't know what you borrow, but I know a lot of developers, you know, it can be at 12 or 15%, or, you know, something that converts into equity and things like that. So, you know, if the developer is able to finance at a lower cost, then that can also reduce some of their carrying cost of the project.
One other thing to kind of mention is we work with D.A. Davison, who's helping us issue the bonds. They've advised us that that's the high water mark, and they don't think we would get quite that much money. The maximum that the PID contemplates is $8 million, and they don't believe the bond market will provide that much funding. They believe it'll be quite a bit lower. So a lot of what we're talking about is the high water mark, the worst case scenario for this.
So maybe I could interject a little bit here. I'm back on. I was watching on YouTube, so I didn't miss too much. If that's all right.
Sure, go ahead.
So one of the things that was mentioned is that, you know, the developers can come in and get lower financing, and that can help drive down the costs. And also the amenities that you can provide if you give them that kind of extra gap on the funding. Those are things that I think that you can kind of see. And not only that, but it just makes the project pencil just in general. And as you increase the supply of housing, the more that you make it viable for these, for people, or the supply of housing, the supply of commercial facilities, all of those things can help drive down the price of these things, so it can offset, at least to a degree. I don't think we're all suggesting that it's going to offset it maybe completely. It could, but even if you don't do that, there are some market forces that can take effect there. But ultimately, I think it is a really beneficial way for the developer, especially on commercial properties. The commercial property there will have a mill levy that's assigned to it, and that's going to be paid by by those commercial entities going forward. So that's going to be capitalized into those projects initially, and you're allowing them to spread that over a longer time horizon, and that can help make it pencil a lot better as well.
And these have been successful in Colorado for a few decades. The initial ones weren't set up as well as the Utah model is set up, but
Okay.
it is a financing mechanism that's been used there for a long time.
Okay.
And the Colorado model was very different because it also anticipates that these metro districts that are in Colorado that are the equivalent of PIDs, they actually are involved in the maintenance and ongoing projects there. So there's a lot less control that you have as the local governing entity over them, if you were the counterpart in Colorado. Whereas here, the maintenance is not something that the PID is allowed to do. The mill levy is capped statutorily at 15. You're actually capping it much lower than that even, at 6 mills and 4 mills respectively. And that actually provides your residents with a much more certain future on them. Some of the Colorado PIDs actually, because they didn't have those statutory caps, would go up as high as 50 or 60 mills. And so we've done a lot more conservative effort here in order to make sure that residents, regardless of what the debt payment is, your residents will never have a payment that goes above that mill levy cap.
Okay.
I assume this allows the project to move forward quicker too, right?
Yeah, I think Chairman McConnell brought this up. If you look at our concept plan, we're actually installing roads that will benefit the commercial district. We're installing, it's an inefficient design from the perspective of a residential. We have lots on one side, we're building a whole road. We're doing that very intentional because I think through the initial discussions with the county, there was a lot of attention paid to the commercial, and so we wanted to make sure that we could do our best to execute on that. We put up a sign, and ironically, we've had 4 interested parties we're working with. Nothing to scream and shout and rah-rah, but I think more services minded. There's a few people within the community that want to look at their businesses up here. So with that in mind, we've decided, let's go ahead and try to build these roads now as soon as possible so we could bring access to this. In addition, while we've secured water for the residential portion, we're in the process of securing water for the commercial, and that will include tank space and source, are the two items that we need to go get. And so we're in discussions with that, and there's a very large dollar figure with that. That's a little bit harder because the water usage really depends upon the, depends upon the end user. And so we've got to really get that right, so.
Well, I was just thinking, Blaine, that, time is of the essence. You realize how fast stuff increases in cost, and if they don't get a bond to move ahead and then wait 2 years to gather the money and then go, oh, now we've ate that up.
So internally, discussions we've had, operationally, home building is probably as hard as it's ever been operationally. You go to pour a foundation, you may or may not get cement that day. And so we're having a lot of challenges. To counteract that, what we're trying to do is install as much infrastructure as we can now versus trying to wait. So we're buying as much pipe as we can, and we're telling our contractors, secure the materials now, let's go ahead and take that risk up front, because we know that the uncertainty of the market, that's how we're trying to counteract it. So this would facilitate that. I don't know if materials will ever come down in price. Maybe they moderate a little bit, who knows, but the attempt is to do as much now.
Okay, so this item's scheduled for a public hearing. Is there a motion to go to public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn the public meeting and convene a public hearing.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any members of the public that would like to address this item? Hearing none.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adjourn the public hearing and reconvene the public meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. On both of those were Newton and Wilson. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any further questions for the applicant or comments on the documents? I did note, I think Stacy pointed out earlier that Jan Ferris is no longer the county attorney. There's also multiple references to the county council as opposed to the county commission in the document. So we might want to fix that. I also had, can you explain so the map that you have at the back, those are the two districts, right? The yellow and the green. What's the additional land?
Black.
Did you identified some potential additional property?
So this one's actually, the annexation, I can speak to that. So we do have the concept of an annexation area, which generally you'd have if the developer maybe is only taken down 200 acres and they're going to take down another 200. Here, what we've just said is, these are the boundaries, and just those two district boundaries together are what would constitute the annexation area. And why we would do that is if, let's say there's a bump in the road, the economy changes, and now they say, we're going to do more commercial space, less residences, or something like that, they could move that boundary 100 feet to accommodate the adjustment in other plans without having to go through another public hearing county process, and instead that could be handled at the district level. So they don't have the ability to reach out and grab any land outside of their initial boundaries, but they could, swap acreages with.
So, okay, so that's what section 3 of the resolution's trying to do?
Yeah,
okay.
The annexation area. Yeah, so this one doesn't have an area sitting out there that could be brought in.
So where's the third area?
There's not a third area.
Okay, all right.
They've built in a mechanism to adjust the boundary between the commercial and the residential.
None of that's anticipated, but again, it's just to make sure they have the arsenal of tools that they, that you could need in uncertain circumstances.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Nope. I also pointed out just a couple of corrections to him too, where it referred to the city.
I'm going to send you an updated one just as soon as I get my Wi-Fi connected.
Yeah, it's one thing to call us council, but a whole nother thing to call us city.
My vocals and then I got another page added, so I apologize for that. I thought though that sorry, I've been mistaken. I thought that this was a county council, so
Well, we were until January 1st.
Okay, I had it the other way in my mind. So I think the other times I've been in front of you was, got it.
You have it right the first time. If you're going to approve it tonight, it'll be CR-21-06, your resolution number.
You say that again, I'll just type it in mine as well.
CR-21-06.
Okay, is there further discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve a resolution number CR-21-06, creating the Rome Public Infrastructure District Number 1 and Rome Public Infrastructure District Number 2. Also appointing Board of Trustees and approving the governing documents for the proposed districts with the changes noted this evening.
I will second it. Go ahead.
As I say, I don't care, either one of us can. Put us both down, I don't care.
So, okay, in terms of the action below, is there a proposed interlocal agreement? I didn't see that.
So it's on the back of the governing document, and what it is it's just a restatement of the governing documents. The governing document acts as the charter, the governing document, the governance for the district, and the interlocal agreement is the county's hook to get back at the district if it was to, violate the terms of the governing document. So it's just an enforcement mechanism for the governing document.
Do we need to read the first paragraph of that resolution just to cover our bases here? I can do that if...
You certainly can, yeah, I think that
if you want us to do that.
I'm just trying to see where it is.
Might have to steal that again to read it. Here it is. Okay. I'll restate it then. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve resolution number CR-21-06, a resolution of the County Commission of the County of Morgan County, Utah, providing for the creation of the Rome Public Infrastructure Districts Number 1 and 2, the districts as an independent district, authorizing and approving a governing document and interlocal agreement, approving of an annexation area, appointing boards of trustees, authorizing other documents in connection therewith and related matters.
I'll second it.
Okay, so motion by Commissioner Newton, seconded by Commissioner Fackrell. Are there any questions on the motion as restated? And that included the changes we...
Yes, including the changes made this evening.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
So Lisa, I'm going to send that to you right now with those updates.
Okay, that moves us to commissioner comments. Do you want to start? Commissioner Anderson?
Oh.
If
Where do
any.
we begin?
If any.
No, I don't have any comments for today.
Okay.
Right now, I don't either.
Okay.
It's just a jumble of everything, and we're trying to put it all together.
Okay.
Nothing from me as well today.
All right.
I have nothing.
We were able to get an account open for Rocky Mountain Power to get an estimate at the airport.
Oh, good.
So, I didn't know the county didn't have an account prior to that date, so we've got that done. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Hey, it's only 6:30.
So now what do we do on the other item? Administrative or what?
I don't think we have to announce it, we can just meet.
Yeah, we can just move after they turn everything off.
Yeah, we can.
Stacy, were you able to look, do we need to approve the appointment of the county attorney in as part of a public meeting? Or can we do an administrative discussion and make a decision?
Do you know how I would make this so this doesn't receive my text messages?
Yeah, I'd like to know that too.
I don't know the Apple stuff at all.
I don't know.
I don't know
I
how
don't
it
even use
it
Apple
happened, but
one.
mine doesn't get them, so.
Yeah.
I don't know
You
why
gotta-
mine gets it.
Is that a Surface or just a?
You must be signed
There
into
you
an
go.
Apple account.
Is it sharing your phone with your iPad?
Well, it shouldn't be. It's a whole different
There's a
account.
setting that you have to go into, it's an Apple thing. Because my iPad shares my husband's iPad, and it drives him crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna have to show me how this works then.
It's in the settings for the sharing.
So you should see them.
The government never ceases to amaze me.
That's just fine.
He didn't even hear me.
You guys outsource the surveyor, so he's.
So it'd have to be under texting then.
Remember that there's a way to shut it off.
Do you want me to, I can file all this stuff.
The best expert on this is Mauricio Melendez. He knows this Mac stuff quite well. iPad, Apple, whatever you want to call them.
I'm just looking at this code provision. Just says the county legislative body shall appoint one of the nominees to fill the vacant position.
So what do you have to do? Have a silent vote here,
No, we don't need to have a silent vote. I guess the question is, do we just want to do it administratively?
Under, you guys are adjourned.
Yeah, we're adjourned.
Under settings.
or? Okay, that's where I'm at.
Oh, I thought you were answering our
Yeah.
legislative question.
So did I.
Notifications,
Messages.
then went down to messages, and I have it off on this one. Whether, is yours on?
Badges or allow
So,
notification.
this just says appoint.
I have that one.
I have it
I'm
on.
not seeing anything that
Thank you.
requires
No, it
us to
started,
do
it started doing all
a
this.
public meeting.
I don't care if he sees my messages, but he was just like,
a public
I'm trying
hearing.
to read it.
And I guess we could have a discussion.
He was getting yours.
Every time they update, you have to.
And then,
shut something new
if
on.
we need to ratify, we can ratify.
That's true. We could appoint and then ratify at our next meeting.
Yeah, if you could, and that way we could get them started.
Are we still on YouTube or are we down now?
Okay, I'm trying to get him on the phone.
Okay.
Okay, will you please shut us
It
down?
looks like it's still on.
Thank you, sir.
It's still pointed at you.
Is it? Is it still on?
Yeah, it'll flip.
Okay.
I can't tell if there's a light on.
Not that it matters, if we're an administrative meeting, you can watch us all they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
We're not
that's
going
true.
in closed session.
Yeah, so you guys can stick around if you'd like. We don't mind if you do.
As long as I don't miss Oak Island, you know.
They gonna find the treasure this time?
You're gonna find something. It's just a button, I'm telling you, it's just a button. I'm
What
gonna
is
go-
this? What's it called?
I'm gonna see if I have
The
it in my file. I don't-
the Mystery of Oak Island.
Okay.
Okay, never heard of it.
History Channel.
So we
On Discovery.
interviewed our two potential candidates for county attorney, Garrett Smith and Dallin Durbano. We did that yesterday. We asked them a consistent set of questions. Got responses from both. Both are relatively young in their practices, but both have good experience in different areas. We don't have a lot in terms of criminal experience, but we've got an assistant county attorney that's hired by contract to handle most of the criminal matters, and he's able to assist in bringing the new county attorney up to speed. So